Hey there, everybody. Welcome into the It's Official podcast. He's Jeff Siegel. I'm Jeremy Plonk. We represent First Bet and Express Bet. Hope you had a great Thanksgiving. Hopefully the refrigerator and the leftovers 5 days later are at least cleared out and you're back to eating something other than turkey stuffing and mashed potatoes, Jeff. We've got a big week of racing coming up on the calendar here with a couple new meets opening up. The Los Al out in your neck of the woods will be the new California circuit at Oaklawn Park in Arkansas. Their 24-25 season about to get started on Friday. And we also have opening day coming up Wednesday night at Turfway Park in Kentucky. So a lot of new stuff, a lot of something old, something new this week.
Did you see the entries for Turfway? I mean, 12 horse fields, every race filled to the brim.
Yep.
I mean, who would have thunk it when it used to be called, what was it, Latonia?
Latonia, right?
Worst racing in America, and now it's found its spot. And thank you for the purses there to attract. And I think the all-weather tracks, I think there are trainers who know that they have horses that'll fit there. But it's actually a good time of the year, even though we're waiting out here in California for Santa Anita day after Christmas, because you got Gulfstream, the championship meeting starting. You got Fairgrounds, as you mentioned, Oaklawn coming up, Aqueduct, and Gulfstream, back to Gulfstream, good racing there. So, if you want to gamble and you really want to take the month of December to really dig in, there are opportunities, I guarantee you. And we've got some really important racing this weekend, especially at NYRA. I mean, I can't wait for that card. So, there's no rest for the weary handicapper. There's always another gamble out there that you can grab. So we'll be trying to do our part, not only in this show, but Friday as well.
All right, let's take a look at our 5 topics to start off and go to the big board here for our first of 5 this week on It's Official. Some baby talk sorting out last weekend where there were 2-year-old stakes all over the place. We saw them in Florida. We saw them in Kentucky. We saw them in New York as well. But we look at our major stake races from the 2-year-old scene last week. And the biggest of the big was the Kentucky Jockey Club at Churchill Downs, where it went to First Resort. Godolphin, the first of 2 big ones for them over the weekend.
First Resort at the quarter pole, heads for home in front. Dapper Moon is back into second. Tistastic in behind with Redacted. Jonathan's Way switched outside, and here comes Jonathan's Way. He's running up into second with a furlong to go. First Resort, though, got the jump, and it's clear by 5 with a 16th to go. Jonathan's Way runs out of racetrack. First Resort bounding home, wins it by 3.
Back to the dirt, the solution for First Resort. They tried the summer stakes at Woodbine on the turf last time out. He's now won 2 of 3 on the main track. They only lost a second-place finish in the Saratoga Special. Jeff, what do you make of this son of Uncle Mo?
You notice that all these Godolphin 3-year-olds or 2-year-olds at this stage with 3-year-olds in a month, don't they all look the part? They all are big, strong, strapping, healthy, powerful, maturing colts. And First Resort, I don't think he was that well regarded by his connections earlier this year. I mean, and then no knock on Owen Hardy. He's a good trainer. I've known him for years. Good guy. But he doesn't get the cream of the crop. Let's face it.
He's probably getting Godolphin's third best because Brennan Walsh has been getting a lot of good ones from Godolphin in recent years. So he's probably getting the third team of the U.S. horses.
At best. And if you look at him, this colt won first time out, but was 9-1 in his second start when he went from Ellis Park to Saratoga. So he wasn't all that impressive. He won nicely, ran well with second that day. And the grass race was a race that was on the calendar, so they threw him in. Even though on pedigree, he really doesn't strike me as a grass horse. But this was a good effort for him. 2 turns around Churchill. Buyer number was not great, but it was solid enough. It represented a significant forward move. And he does look like a colt by Uncle Mo that's going to mature and get better and better. And we've already seen him run 2 turns. We've already seen him win at Churchill. I mean, I would like to own him. I can tell you that, I don't know whether he was the best 2-year we saw last weekend, but he's still pretty good.
The horse who ran second in there, Jonathan's Way, had so much promise after the first 2 starts. He's now lost 2 in a row. He was 7th at a Paceless Breeders' Cup Juvenile when not able to make up any ground. But this colt by Vacoma acquitted himself a bit with a decent second-place finish here in the Kentucky Jockey Club. The question will be, is he a Triple Crown kind of horse, Jeff, or was he a win-early type by Vacoma who Everything he sent out this summer was winning like crazy. We'll see what kind of developmental skills they have. I know that you like to say, like with Curlins, the Curlins get better with age. We don't know what's going to happen to the Vacomas. We know they were brilliant right out of the box. What do you make of Jonathan's Way? Is his stock still rising, or is it flattened out?
I think it's flattened out a little bit. I liked him because he won the Iroquois, but he did that gate to wire. And I'll always say that when you get a horse earning a big number in a controlling speed scenario, you really don't know for sure. I mean, that's them at their best, at their pristine trip on the front end, nobody pressuring them. I liked him in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile more as a gamble than any kind of sure thing winner. He didn't run well that day. He wasn't close to the pace. He doesn't really have a massive turn of foot. And in this race, again, he was a horse that was caught for speed, as I say, in Europe, where he really needed to quicken from the furlong pole to the wire. And he kept to his task, but he doesn't have that blast that a really good horse has. If I were his connections, I would set my sights lower. I would go after the second level type of races. Get him confidence. Maybe by the spring he'll be back to where he needs to be. But right now, there are others out there that I am much more high on than Jonathan's Way.
Yeah, we'll see where Phil Bauer goes with him. Bauer will be in the Mid-South during the course of the winter. Oak Lawn Fairgrounds having horses running at both of those locales. This one by Vacoma out of the Indian Charlie Mare female drama. The Indian Charlies all seem to want to be milers, so we just don't know how classic distance these Vacomas out of a mare like that will want to go. Jonathan's Way, like you said, maybe some of the smaller stakes
like
in the 3-year-old scenes for a lot of money, but a mile and a 16th might be the best. And like you said, Tampa Bay at a mile and a 16th, that might be your Derby. And I think that's where you have to be realistic with these 2-year-olds turning 3. Everybody has a Derby day. It's not all the first Saturday in May. For some of these horses, their Derby are going to be other races. Maybe even like at Gulfstream, when you talk Fountain of Youth, and you're only to a mile and a 16th, right? What's the biggest race I can win at the most achievable distance, the right class level? Those might be the kind of races you're looking at for Jonathan's Way. Now, we talked about the Fountain of Youth, the horse who's going to be one of the major contenders on that Florida Derby trail at Gulfstream Park, made his presence absolutely known last Saturday. His name is Rated by Merit. We've been talking about him on this show since his very fast debut win. I thought maybe he was vulnerable, stretching out around 2 turns at a short price for the first time on Saturday. I tried to pick against him. It was not a smart move, probably one of the worst moves I made over Thanksgiving weekend, trying to beat Rated by Merit. You'll see here, he was never in doubt.
He's fending off a serious challenge from Classic, of course. Dropping back, Latch the Hatch. Lou's going to try to rally for third. Rated by Merit. He's just toying with him here. Off the turn and the stretch drive. Rated by Merit. Rios asked him to finish it up, and it's finished indeed. He'll go 3 for 3 in the series. He's a talented colt indeed. The son of Battalion Runner. Rated by Merit, and a no doubt about it victory. Classic, of course, was...
The series that track announcer Pete Aiello was talking about was the Florida Sire Stakes series. So those races stretch out in distance. This was the first 2-turn race. Last year, we saw Ben Tornado absolutely dominate the first 2 legs of the series, and at a short price was beaten in the third leg. And I thought, you know what? He turned out to be a sprinter as well. Ben Tornado had such a good year this year at 3 sprinting. Maybe that was going to be the case with Rated by Merit. That was my logic going into the race in betting. But my logic coming out of the race says this horse looks pretty legit on the Florida Derby trail, Jeff.
First of all, you don't have to apologize for trying to beat a 1-5 shot. I mean, anything can happen in the race. I mean, so you picked against him. Maybe you bet against him. And you did not cash a ticket on a horse that went off at 20 cents on the dollar. How will you get over that, Jerry? So that's
I will move on.
Right, move on. Now, this colt, he's fast on figures. That was a 93 buyer number. I mean, he went away to Equibase. I mean, he's running fast. He's doing it under pristine conditions. He's making the lead. He's not going fast, and he's got nobody chasing him. I mean, you talk about everything going your way.
Right.
I mean, that flatters him, I think. Visually, he was sloppy changing his leads, kind of runs with his head up a little bit in the final stages. I think he's a good colt, but these races aren't real. I mean, not when you talk about some of the horses that not only are we going to discuss today, but that are waiting in the wings.
Right.
And I think if I had this colt, I would protect him as much as I could, which is to say, okay, maybe there's no more Florida bred races I can run in, but I'm not going after anybody important yet.
Okay.
And win as many as we can. There'll be time to trust him if we have to, but I don't think he's ready. I like him, but I don't think he's a Derby horse. I don't even think he's a mile and a quarter horse. And
Right.
I think his races have flattered him, which is to say he's good, but maybe not as good as the paper would make you believe he is.
All right, so you're putting out the brakes a little bit on Rated by Merit for sure. Maybe a race like the Sam F. Davis or something like that. Then mile on the 16th at Tampa,
Exactly.
before even the big horses get to Tampa for the Tampa Bay Derby. See what you have there and shake it out. There is the 1-turn mile race, the Mucho Macho Man, opening New Year's Day
Right.
on the card at Gulfstream Park. That would come up timing wise, but since he ran in all 3 legs of this Florida Sire Stakes series, I don't think there's any rush to run him back New Year's Day. So maybe you wait a couple more weeks, try the Sam F. Davis, see what happens there, give him a little more time in between starts. But we will see what Michael Yates and company do with Rated by Merit. I wouldn't be surprised if somebody makes a handsome offer on this horse. I thought he might have been sold already after that fast debut win. So they kept him. So they must want to run him, the connections. But Rated by Merit, certainly the star of the Florida breds right now, heading into the 3-year-old season. Now, let's turn our attention to Barnes. Let's next up amongst these big 2-year-olds in our Baby Talk segment. Barnes was a first-time starter who was offered in the Kentucky Derby Future Wager that was held Breeders' Cup week before he even had a name. He was just unnamed 2-year-old colt. The Bob Baffert trainee cost $3.2 million. They eventually named him for Baffert assistant Jimmy Barnes, and he made his career debut last week at Churchill Downs. Significant as much in the event as the horse, but maybe the horse will turn out to be more significant than the event. The event we're talking about is Bob Baffert's return to Churchill Downs for the first time since his suspension was handed out after Medina Spirit tested positive for a banned substance in the 2021 Kentucky Derby and subsequently disqualified from that victory. So Barnes brought Bob Baffert back to Louisville. Jeff, they seemed to welcome him with open arms. Bill Costagian from the racetrack was there shaking his hand. Everybody, the local media seemed happy to have Baffert back. For a guy who kind of black-eyed the sport and the way it was treated in Kentucky for the last couple of years, it was kind of an awkward return. It was almost like nothing ever happened, and it's, bygones be bygones at this point, and he seems to be welcomed back with open arms.
Yeah, I mean, you don't usually ship a maiden to run in a maiden race
Right.
Like that when you could had one in your own backyard, but obviously this was concocted, and it was fine. I mean, I watched the race. I normally wouldn't be watching the fifth or whatever it was on a Wednesday at Churchill, and I so much hype on this colt. You kind of expected him to go out and win by 10. Mm-hmm. He didn't, and he made some mistakes along the way. But I liked the courage that he showed, and he did run pretty fast. So right. I always say, and I'll say it again, and I have a streak going about saying this every show for the last 2 years, but I'll say it again, and that is, you don't learn too much about the first race. It's the second one that's important. Mm-hmm. And evidence of that, we will discuss that later on the program with another colt. But he overcame a lot. He got a lot of experience in this race. Down on the inside, steadied, wrong lead, drifted out, did a lot of things wrong, still won. And now, okay, that's great. Mm-hmm. What's he going to do next time? What do you do with him now? All right, the next start, we're going to find out whether he performs more professionally, if he stretches out. We'll find out what he's made of. Right now, he's got a lot of promise, but that's all he's got. And for him to be overhyped, not unexpectedly because of the connections, but I'm still in a wait-and-see mode with him. What about you, Jeremy?
Yeah, I was expecting to see a little bit more here, right? I mean, he gets it done. He overcame a little bit, but he didn't dominate a horse who has already had some chances. So let's give the fans a chance to go back and look at this from the 27th at Churchill Downs. Barnes, the $3.2 million debut winner.
Lottery win, trying to keep Barnes buried down inside, who comes off the rail now. In a drive is Barnes, but he's got 2 lengths to make up on Innovator. Innovator leads the way with 1 furlong to go. Barnes trying to get on track, and this final furlong has wandered to the far outside, but Barnes is gaining ground now. Innovator digs in down toward the rail. Barnes on the wrong lead. One of these two. Photo finish. Photo finish on the wire. Did the 1-4 Barnes beat Innovator? It is 2.
sometimes it takes a while for a horse to put it all together. You can't expect it all in the first start. Obviously, in, out, responding to the whip either way, not running straight, on the wrong lead. We saw a lot with Sierra Leone this year, right? And he finally didn't put it all together until the Breeders' Cup Classic, when he finally ran his true race and got the big prize. How long will it take for Barnes to develop? We'll find out. Hopefully he can stay healthy and get that opportunity. It was shades of 96 there, Cavanier and Grindstone on the wire, Lucas and Baffert in the 96 Derby, 2002, where it was War Emblem and Proud Citizen. So an exacta at Churchill Downs under the spires with Baffert and Lucas. They're both older now, more mature, a lot of water under the bridge, a lot of history in that maiden race at Churchill Downs. But again, it felt quirky to me. I didn't think, and I'm going back to the personal side of this, beyond the horse. We both agree we've got to see more out of the horse to know if he's a legit star or not. But just back to the human side of it, I did not expect the kind of warm and fuzzies of Baffert going back. I thought it was going to kind of feel awkward and, kind of like you have to see your ex at your kid's recital or something like that, like you tiptoe in. And like Deion Sanders, did you notice on senior day when Deion Sanders walked out with his kids at Colorado and his ex-wife was there to meet him? He stopped halfway and turned around instead of greeting his ex-wife. That's kind of what I felt like we were going to see with Baffert at Churchill Downs. But it was actually very amicable, and maybe that's good for moving forward, but we will see. Obviously, we think, and we've talked about this from when they welcomed Baffert back and ended the suspension at Churchill Downs, we think that there's a Breeders' Cup implication to that, right? Churchill Downs wants to host the Breeders' Cup the next year that it's available, and having Bob Baffert banned next year, things like that may not be the best for that event to be held at Churchill Downs. So I think there's some business reasons why they did it, but look, let's see how it all shakes out here. Everybody play nice, and we'll move on from that one. But that was Barnes winning at Churchill Downs. One other 2-year-old we want to hit in this segment, Jeff, on the Phillies side. They ran the Goldenrod Stakes for the 2-year-old fillies on the Kentucky Oaks Trail. That was all about Brad Cox's good cheer. And in fact, the 2-year-old filly division has been nothing but Brad Cox's good cheer this year. Let's go back and look at this filly.
Good cheer with a big move on the far turn. Has taken charge at the top of the stretch. Eclatant's going to fight with her, though. Quiet Side is back in third. There's a furlong to go. Good cheer is gone clear. Clear by 3. Quiet Side trying to run her down late. Good cheer holding on to the lead. Quiet Side can't get to her. This filly is 4 for 4. Good cheer.
4 for 4, 3 of those wins at Churchill Downs. She'll be happy to come back, this Medaglia d'Oro filly, for the Kentucky Oaks next year if she's good enough. Of course, she's not even the best 3-year-old or 2-year-old filly in the barn. That's Immersive, the multiple Grade 1 winner who won the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Fillies. Mohima, another Brad Cox star 2-year-old filly. Eclatant was in this race and backed up a little bit in the stretch. Maybe she's the best sprinter amongst the Brad Cox trainees. But man, is he loaded. What do you make a good cheer?
She's got all the measurables, as they say, if she were an athlete. I mean, she's got the pedigree, she's got the style, she's got the proven form over the track in terms of the Kentucky Oaks. Mm-hmm. Looks like the longer they go, the better she'll like it. She's got enough tactical speed to always sit in the second flight and then kick on. And she went by the leaders pretty easily there. Was just ridden out to the wire. I don't think she was all out. She's not blazingly fast on speed figures yet, but I also think that she's going to be the kind that'll do whatever it takes. Mm-hmm. She hasn't had to be blazingly fast to win. Eventually she will, but what an accomplishment what kind of a resume she's building now as a 2-year-old. Unfortunately for her, her stablemate's got that Breeders' Cup win, so she's not going to win a championship this year, but there's always next year. And I'm not so sure that Good Cheer won't catch up and surpass her stablemate and everybody else that's in that barn, based on the way. I mean, she doesn't look like she has a weakness. I mean, she's not going to be pace dependent in any race, and the longer the better. I mean, I love her. Good cheer by Medaglia d'Oro. It's good to see Medaglia d'Oro still producing great fillies. So many years after Rachel Alexandra. I mean, that's nice to see.
Yeah, that's longevity when you are able to string that many of them together. Good Cheer may have raced her way onto the Eclipse Award ballot, though. She could be one of the
Yeah,
three
oh, yeah,
finalists, I think.
got to be.
But you've got to figure that Immersive is the stone cold 2-year-old filly champion. Brad Cox is going to take his string this year to Oaklawn and the Fairgrounds. Obviously, the Fantasy and Fairgrounds Oaks are very good preps and stepping stones historically to the Kentucky Oaks. He'll figure out how to separate them there. Somebody will come to Keeneland as the horse to beat in the Ashland more than likely. And Cox also has a string running this year at Gulfstream Park. Not a lot of big 3-year-old fillies at Gulfstream Park races stakes wise there. So, but Cox has got plenty of options to separate all these great 2-year-old fillies about to turn 3. We'll talk about another one in that holster, a 2-year-old filly for Brad Cox, when we get to our Stars of Tomorrow segment. So we're not even done talking about the Cox 2-year-old fillies, but we are done talking about our Baby Talk segment, topic 1 this week on It's Official. To the second we go. The Derby Futures were held last week. It was the second Kentucky Derby future wager for Kentucky Derby 151. 40 individual wagering interest. Here's the way the odds shook out amongst the top horses in the individual betting interest. They're all across the left column there. Those are all the horses that clocked in at 25-1 or lower. That total is 2, 4, 6, 8, 9 of them came in at 25-1 or less. We saw Barnes in action. Jeff, was this just a recency thing? Barnes ran Wednesday. The future wager was right after it. Or do you think there's really that kind of groundswell for him?
I think it's the Bronny James effect. You take a supposedly great player who really can't play, right. But he's got so much reputation and so many social media followers that everybody's heard about Barnes now. You win a race like that, it's nice. Are you taking 13-1 on Barnes for the Kentucky Derby? Forget about being the best colt. He still has to make it. That's insanity in terms of wagering value. Now, if you think he's going to be that good because it's Bob Baffert and all that, that's fine, but you don't take 13-1 on that. So, that's insanity. East Avenue has ability. He had a terrible start, obviously, in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile. I was disappointed that he still didn't make a run for it. It's okay to have an excuse not to win, but shouldn't he have done something after that? And he didn't. Citizen Bull is a front runner who's been gifted some easy leads, and I don't know whether he's a mile and a quarter horse. Now, I like Sovereignty. That's a nice colt. I think he's going to develop. And then we go past Chancer McPatrick, who I think is a one-corner horse in gaming, who's pretty decent, but not great. And then you come to a colt we're going to talk about later on the show that just blew me away. His name is Patch Adams. And when we talk about him in our Stars of Tomorrow segment, you're going to see why, at least I am, and I think Jeremy is as well, sky high on this colt. I think he could be as good as, if not better than anything in the class. And we'll show you what we think and why.
Yeah, and Bullard there at 24-1 is a horse we saw win at Del Mar. I believe the Bob Hope it was for Mike McCarthy, or Michael McCarthy. And you said you think he's as good or better than any of the Bafferts out there right now. So Bullard won certainly. But again, 24-1 is way too short this time of year. I'm looking at least 50-1 or more if I was even going to get interested in this pool. Journalism was another Michael McCarthy winner at Del Mar around 2 turns. Romanesque was a Baffert winner. We put those two on the list at 52-1 and 74-1 because they were recent Stars of Tomorrow here on our podcast that we spotlighted. All other 3-year-olds at 9-5, not that bad of a price on the all others, Jeff. Again, there were 40 wagering interested here, but for this time of year to get almost 2-1, 560, 580 back on a mutual to the Kentucky Derby on all others right now, that wasn't a bad gamble.
That's the value there because that doesn't even take into consideration all the horses. And there are many, many of them that haven't started yet that are really high quality horses, especially out here in California with Baffert. Doesn't take into consideration any foreign horses that we may not even have heard of yet that are pretty good.
That might be 4 horses in the gate the way it's going lately. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I would rather have 9-5 on the all others 100 times over than 13-1 on Barnes. I can tell you that.
Right.
But it's interesting. I'm glad we showed that graphic because it gives you kind of a summary as to what's out there so far. And some of the colts, you mentioned the colts, the couple of colts that we saw out here that were big prices. The one thing about both of those, Romanesque, Journalism, is they have the pedigree to advance, to mature, develop, to go farther. You don't want to take any fast sprinter now. I mean, they're not going to win a Derby, but these colts have a right to improve. I don't know whether they will or not, but again, I use the word measurables because when I do a lot of scouting for athletes, the first thing they ask you, does he have the measurables? Is he 6'2", 210, or is he 5'9", something, for a DB, So anyway, but those are nice colts, and it makes the spring lead up to the spring classics very interesting.
Two options I think at good value would be a horse named Hot Property at 90-1 in that pool for Brad Cox. This is a horse who won 2 turning at Fairgrounds in the debut. Fairgrounds has been such a good springboard in recent years, and Brad Cox has been knocking on the door towards the Kentucky Derby. I know he won the one with Mandaloun by a DQ, but that path and a horse who's bedded down and just broke his maiden at Fairgrounds recently, that's the kind of horse that you might get interested in. Certainly 90-1 there, Hot Property. And I think the fillies, all other fillies at 69-1, kind of interesting because we're mentioning Brad Cox a lot here, but he's got 4 or 5 great fillies. And let's just say those all develop next year. He might look at it and say, look, I could win the Oaks with 2, 3, or 4. And maybe my top one, this is the year to take a shot at the Derby. Maybe maybe Immersive will turn out to be just, something special. Maybe the filly we just saw, at the top of the show, maybe she will be that in good cheer. But I think the fillies at 69-1 worth a little interest at that point this far out. Let's go to our third topic this week on It's Official. We go from the young horses to talk about some veterans in here. We're going to smoke out the Cigar Mile. The Cigar Stakes coming up this Saturday, Grade 2 company. It'll be our Express Bet race of the week. We'll have full written analysis of it coming up a little bit later in the week. This is the co-feature on the card Saturday at Aqueduct that also includes the Remsen Stakes. There's a Meet the Contenders that you can read in the blog section at expressbet.com and news.first.com to get introduced to the contenders for the Remsen Stakes. But Jeff, let's talk about this Cigar Mile. There's a lot of familiar names in the race, and I know a couple of them you want to put in the spotlight.
It's a good race, isn't it? I mean, it should be.
Absolutely.
I don't know. I mean, I've seen a lot worse grade 1s than this one, and it's not a grade 1 anymore. It's a grade 2. So this to me is a grade 1. Last year, I was, why not be bold and make some kind of outlandish statement? And if you're wrong, nobody remembers anyway, right? But if you're right, you can pat yourself on the back forever. And I saw Locked win when he broke his maiden at Saratoga in that funky mile race. They ran around 1.5 turns.
Yeah.
And I stated, I think he's the Kentucky Derby winner next spring. And he came back and won the Breeders' Futurity, and he did that despite the fact that he was wide every step of the way. And then he just got outfooted. I mean, no one's going to beat Fierceness the way Fierceness ran that day.
Yeah.
Then he gets hurt. He comes back in an allowance race, won 7/8 and 21 flat, wins off by himself, never really asked. And I think maybe this Gunrunner colt this year or into next year as a 4-year-old is going to fulfill the heights that I predicted he would have last year as a 3-year-old. And, this is a step up, obviously. He's tackling some tough, older professional horses, but the way he ran in his comeback was the way I thought he was capable of winning last year. And now he gets that chance to prove that he belongs with this kind of group, and I think he does.
Let's take a look at Locke's allowance win. Again, he was off almost a full calendar year and comes back here. And like you said, 21 flat winning at Aqueduct. Let's go back and take a look at his return victory.
Comes Quality Chic. They reach the top of the stretch, and here's Locked. And Locked is ready to pounce. And here is Locked opening up. Gun It is right there in second, trying to hang on for that spot. And Quality Chic up on the outside. Late run there, Bramido. But Locked is now approaching the final 16th. Was bet like he was ready to come back, and Locked at 2-5 will win the opener impressively. It's Locked who wins it. Gun It, then came Quality.
Jeff, that's a very sharp victory in the return, and this is a good setup. I mean, second off the layoff to the Cigar Mile, again, an extended 1-turn mile. And not to get too far ahead with a horse who missed almost a year, but that could turn out to be a real boon for him into a 4-year-old season. You got the Pegasus World Cup sitting there potentially off a third off the layoff, running here in early December in the Cigar Mile. What a potential 2-race bang it could be for Locked if he's as good as you think he is. But he's going to have to be good to win the Cigar Mile because this is no gimme. You've got grade 1 winner in here, Bookham Dano. You got grade 1 winner Mulligan in this spot. Locked, of course, a grade grade 1 winner. Pipeline is grade 1 placed. You got Senor Buscador, a grade 1 winner in the field. Post Time, Coastal Mission, graded stakes winners, kind of up and down the cast here. This is a really good race. It's a good mix of sprinters, routers, and horses that kind of hit right in the middle. And that's what you would expect in a grade 2 race like this at the 1-turn mile distance. Horse coming off the Breeders' Cup Dirt Mile is one that we want to keep an eye on as well. That being Post Time. He couldn't get to Serrano last out, but this is a consistent horse who's come up from his Maryland base and had success in New York in the past. He had no trouble making the ship to California last time. That was a 2-turn race. Post Time is probably better around 1, but let's get a look at his race in the Breeders' Cup Dirt Mile and then get your thoughts on him back in the Cigar Mile.
Tumbarumpa sent along 2.5 back, and now Domestic Product is getting going. Domestic Product's going to come 5 wide. Right behind him, Sees the Gray. A really wide run here for Skippy Longstocking. Katona's also trying to mount a charge. Mufasa and Post Time is coming from the back of the pack as well. Full Serrano has taken the lead. Post Time is splitting horses late. Domestic Product on the outside. It is going to be Full Serrano and Post Time. Full Serrano in the Dirt Mile. Post Time was second.
Big effort there from the Brittany Russell trainee, and back to the 1-turn race. This and a much longer stretch run to work with here at Aqueduct, almost 300 feet more, I believe, in stretch run to work with. So a big chance in here, I would think, for Post Time, Jeff.
Absolutely, and I always handicap a 1-turn mile as a unique race. Mm-hmm. Not a sprint, really, or it can be if there's no speed in the race, then the leader gets out, loose on the lead, and keeps going. Not a route race. It's a specialist race. Mm-hmm. And I really think that, Post Time has got the perfect settling, late kick type of style for a 1-turn mile. I tell you who else, Mulligan's got a good style for that too, because he can lay fairly close. The pace will be softer for him that he's been seeing in sprints. And he strikes me as a colt that will like to settle right off the pace and then make one little blast home. I don't know whether he would have that same kind of punch around 2 turns. Mm-hmm. So for me, if I'm right about Locked, I better be right about Locked, because this is no easy task. He's going to have to be as good as I hope and think that he is, because to me, Mulligan and Post Time, I mean, they are in their element here. Mm-hmm. I can't believe this isn't a grade 1 with these kind of horses in the race. So, right. You just had the runner-up in the Breeders' Cup Mile. You've had Mulligan, who's obviously very, very good. He's already a grade 1 winner. How the heck is this not a grade 1? Anyway, it's a good race. And whoever you like, you're probably going to get a square price, because there's a lot of contention and a lot of horses in here that are going to take some money.
And dude, we mentioned if the goal for Locked is the Pegasus World Cup, which would make a lot of sense, he could get a lot out of this race, even if he doesn't win, right? There might be sharper 1-turn milers right now that have a little seasoning edge on him and might get the best of him, but a good second-place finish or something like this could set him up for a race in the Pegasus World Cup. Very interesting race, though. That's Saturday's Cigar Mile. You mentioned Mulligan in there. I'd be remiss if I didn't mention Flavian Pratt having an absolutely banner year. Saw the stat this weekend on Twitter, 23 graded stakes wins this year for Flavian Pratt to this point. 25 is the all-time single-season record. He's got a chance. There's not a lot of graded stakes left, but he's got a chance to catch Jerry Bailey's 2003 record-setting season with 25 graded stakes wins in a season. Mulligan could get him up over the to 24 in there. And, of course, there's multiple graded stakes races on the Saturday card at Aqueduct. There's a reasonable chance he could win 2 graded stakes Saturday at the Big A and match Jerry Bailey's record, maybe even pass it with 3 wins before the end of the season. So Flavian Pratt, Jeff, you saw him out in Southern California, ride out there and dominate before coming east. I remember talking about this when he came east, and there was some chatter about how, Pratt's riding with the big boys now. And I remember you saying, like, don't worry about Flavian Pratt. He'll be just fine. Turns out he was. Well,
I as a gambler out here, I was telling people that this was talking about like 2010 or whatever it was. You're going to get a lot of value because nobody's ever heard of this guy. And trust me, he's as good as there is and better than most. Mm-hmm. So if you like one and Pratt, even the trainers were a little bit like, well, he's a good grass horse. No, he can do anything. But I was playing, I was absolutely circling every Pratt starter on the card And then figuring out if after that whether they were good enough to win it. They were even remotely close. I said, okay, I found my top horse. Move on
Right.
to the next race, And now he's he's absolutely world class. There is nothing he can't do.
Mm-hmm. We'll see if he can get the Bailey's record again. He is 2 behind, 23 graded stakes wins on the year for Flavien Prat. We already know the entries for the Cigar Mile coming up on Saturday, and entry timing is the topic that we're going to take on next. 7-day out entries, where we see a lot of tracks enter Saturday for next Saturday, Wednesday for the following Wednesday. Keeneland went to that here in 2024. A lot of tracks are entering farther out. And Jeff's got some news that Santa Anita is about to go that direction with the winter spring meet coming up. So let's talk about it. What are the pros and the cons of entering so far out, and do we like it or do we not like it, Jeff?
Well, as the morning winemaker, I love it. It gives me a whole week. Yeah. I mean, I can botch a line in 2 or 3 days. I can do it in a week too if I have to, if I wanted to. But the workload is a little bit less intense when you got so much time in between races. And I think the handicapper, the gambler, would like it as well. He knows well in advance who's running. Mm-hmm. And he can take his time and do all the proper work. There's no rush. Now, the negative part is that because scratch time is the same morning of the race itself, mm-hmm. a lot can happen in a week, and you might have to redo everything you have done because you may get scratches. Mm-hmm. And so, but that's something I'll live with because I think it's great. We get to see the workouts that happened over the weekend by having it 7 days out. So that's part of the impact of the handicapping process. And I don't think anybody really intends to runs and enters a week out that doesn't intend to run. Now, if they don't run, there better be a reason. With small fields, you can't get out unless you've got a vet scratch type of thing. So I'm not even worried about that. I think it's a good thing. I mean, I don't really see a negative. Now, you experienced this at Keeneland. Mm-hmm. What was your experience at Keeneland with the 7-day out entries?
I think it was just fine. It was kind of a non-factor, but people want to run at Keeneland, and there aren't a ton of options. Like in the Northeast or in the Mid-Atlantic, could be a little more problematic where you can kind of look at the entries, right? When everybody's running, when there's Delaware, there's Laurel, there's, Monmouth all running on a Saturday, and you get to see who's entered in which races. You can get a lot more scratches that way, right? You cross enter at a few different tracks. But at a place like Southern California, I don't think it's going to be an issue at all because you're running 3-day race weeks, 4-day race weeks. Where are you going to wait to run, right? I mean, you're not going anywhere. There's nowhere to get on a van in California and go run. So I think it's going to be just like it was at Keeneland, where people, want to be there and there's no better option. I don't think it's going to be a problem there. Will you get a few scratches because of health reasons and things like that because the races are a little farther apart? Sure. You've got to enter Saturday for Saturday, and maybe you're not working until Sunday, or maybe you work Saturday and you don't know how your horse is going to come out of the work until the following morning. You'll get some of that. You'll get some scratches, but I don't think there's any big rash of scratches or anything that take place because of this. But I do think it can be problematic in some areas of the country where there are other options. Just get on a van and go somewhere, or there's just so many other tracks and so many other races that could fill. You just say, let's scratch from this one and wait for the next one. But I don't think that's going to be an option at Santa Anita.
No, it won't, because if you miss with 3-day racing, if you miss a race or scratch out of the race, you better, and it's a vet scratch, you're on the list for a while, and then you may not be able to run that horse back for a month or two after that. Yeah. And so if you're entered, I like it. I do. I mean, but
and this is one that's like, it's way more pro horse player than it is pro horseman. Horsemen would like to have a lot more time to decide what they want to do and not have to be so far ahead. So anything that's pro horse player, I'm for, right? Get out there. Like if you're a player who only plays every Friday, every Saturday, whatever like that, I never look at that person as a weekend warrior. I look at that person as a regular. It's somebody who's got a real life and they regularly get out to the track every Friday as soon as work's over, or every Saturday when they can. To give that person and that player more time to get ready for the weekend and to put more effort into it, I think it's a win. So for that, it's pro horse player, and pretty much anything that's pro horse player, I'm going to be for in those discussions. So 7-day entries, we are both in favor of that. Let's go to our fifth and final topic this week on It's Official. We always wrap things up with our stars of tomorrow. We already talked about two of these horses that we're going to talk about in kind of roundabout fashions. We directly mentioned Patch Adams. He's one of the horses to watch in the Kentucky Derby future wager, bet less than 25 to 1 that we had mentioned. And Jeff, very visually impressed with this one. Let's go back to Patch Adams on November 30th at Churchill Downs.
That's the one trying to go with Patch Adams, but Patch Adams has kicked it into high gear. 5 in front and opening up with each and every stride. Patch Adams finishes with a flourish and is geared down to win it by 10.
That's the way you want to look visually. Reaching out, geared down, not ridden out to the wire. This was highly impressive. Brad Cox's strongest 2-year-old colt, maybe amongst all these fillies that we're talking about. Patch Adams looks like a really good one.
7/8 and 120 and 3. Now the track was very fast this day, but visually you could not be more impressive. And again, I mentioned the second start of a horse's career is far more important than the first one because somehow this colt got beat at Keeneland in his debut, despite the fact that he was 4-5. So he was expected to win, made the lead that day, and got tagged late. And obviously, it was the fact that he didn't win must have been disappointing to his connections. But again, the second start, that's where you find out whether you got something special. And that was his second start. Right. Obviously, first time around 2 turns. I also like the fact that he didn't make the lead. You know, it wasn't one of these, go to the front, go set slow fractions and look great, dominating on the front end. He actually, not only did he sit third early, but he was switched off beautifully. Yeah. He relaxed. When he was asked to quicken, he opened up. He's a big, good-looking colt. He's by Into Mischief and out of a stakes-winning full sister to Well Armed, who won the Dubai World Cup a number of years back. The pedigree suggests he'll run all day. He's a good mover, a lot of scope, obviously very fast in the right barn at Brad Cox. I mean, to me, that colt, I think if you talk about horses that may be Derby-type horses for Saturday in May, he's got to be either at the top or right alongside whoever is on the list of potential Derby favorites, if not winners.
We mentioned Cox is going to have a string at Gulfstream this year. He's always got horses at Fairgrounds at Oklahoma. So there are going to be many options for Patch Adams. You mentioned that, and we talked about this on a previous show, but I think it's really worth reminding people of. Losing that first career start can be such a blessing for some of these 2-year-olds because you get to come back in a maiden race, and if you win your career debut, it's onto a stakes race. There are no non-winners of 2 allowance races for these 2-year-olds or early 3-year-old season type horses. And the other thing about just jumping up into a stakes off of a career debut win, stakes races, they pick the dates for, right? If you're going to run in the Fountain of Youth, we know that race is February X, right? I mean, you've got to make the date of a stakes race. In maiden races, there are maiden races in the condition book like every week. So you can run when you're ready, you know, and you can pick your distance. You can't pick the distance of the stakes races, right? Maybe we come back and run a little bit longer. Maybe we go 2 turns this time. There are so many more options for a second-time starter who still has that maiden condition versus the stakes race where they pick the location, they pick the distance, and they pick the date. Whereas with these maidens, so for the development of a horse, a lot of times when we think of American Pharoah and some other high profile examples, but losing that career debut is not the end of the world. And in many cases for the development of a horse moving forward can be so much better for them. And Patch Adams, they got to pick where they wanted to come back, the distance they wanted to go 2 turns at. You know, I mean, now they're moved into 2 starts under their belt. Now they move into a stakes race wherever Brad wants to go amongst those 3 big locales where he's going to be stationed this winter. Sky could be the limit for that one. There's a lot to like about Patch Adams.
No question about that. You mentioned American Pharoah getting beat first time out. Didn't hurt him.
No.
Didn't hurt Arrogate. He got beat in the summer at Los Alamitos, won the Travers 2 months later. So it's okay. And sometimes it's better off. Charlie Winningham once told me that I don't care if I win first time out. I just want the horse to run well the second time. And that goes way back. And I'm thinking, I didn't kind of grasp that. What did I know? You know, now I realize what he was talking about. So can you wait? I can't wait to see Patch Adams again. I mean,
no, he is up. He is up there. He's immediately rising
Right.
to the top of a lot of lists for this year's Kentucky Derby. Okay, let's talk one more Brad Cox horse. We just talked about Patch Adams. He had a half sister to Idiomatic in the maiden ranks, November 30th at Churchill Downs. Her name was Chasen. And yes, she's another 2-year-old filly in a embarrassment of riches for Brad Cox.
Princess M2 trying to close down the center. There's a furlong to go. Our Shenanigan is up for the lead. Chasen is getting on track now. Here she comes, and Chasen comes on to take the lead and strides away nicely. Chasen wins the opener, just more than a length.
Ears up, never really got down on her belly, just kind of looked to be lumbering along there. The longer, the better, you would think. As a half to Idiomatic, of course, Breeders' Cup Distaff winner from a year ago, Eclipse Award winner. The Rich Kid Richard, Jeff Siegel. I mean, she's going to be part of that barrage of horses we talked about with Brad Cox. He's got Mohima this weekend running in the Des Moselle, the graded stakes race for 2-year-old fillies on the Remsen Cigar Mile Day card at Aqueduct. So just a unbelievable run of 2-year-old fillies he has, and just add Chasen to the list.
And it's exciting to watch these well-bred young colt sore fillies, 2-year-olds, develop. I mean, there's always a star that you want to latch onto, and you saw plenty of them last week. We'll see a few more, I'm sure, before the first of the year, and then there are a whole bunch of 2-year-olds that we haven't seen yet that I know are working well, at least in California. So, man, it's an exciting time. Again, the same thing is who will stay sound, who will stay healthy, and who will progress at the rate that we think they are. And if they do, then we've got ourselves quite a few stars to latch on to in the winter and spring and leading up to the classics.
Yeah, the beautiful thing about the racing calendar and sports overall, too, you hit the end of a season and you start looking forward to next year, right? It's the hot stove league in baseball, they call it. That's what we're looking for. Who are the stars for 2025 to come? And we talked about a bunch of them today on the show. Our Baby Talk segment showed you the Kentucky Jockey Club victory by First Report, another one for Godolphin. Godolphin also won the Golden Rod with good cheer. So a couple stakes wins there at Churchill Downs for the Big Blue. Rated by Merit, won and is now 4 for 4 after sweeping the In Reality Stakes in the Florida Sire Stakes series at Gulfstream Park. But Jeff, not impressed yet visually on this one of being a Florida Derby threat. Barnes won the return of Bob Baffert to Churchill Downs, the $3.2 million maiden debut winner. Had to work hard to do it in kind of an ugly performance, and we'll see how that shakes out. That made him the favorite at 13-1 in the Kentucky Derby future wager that closed this weekend. We try to look and find some value in the futures throughout a horse named Hot Property at 90-1. Maybe the fillies with Brad Cox loaded up at 69-1. It's a value play in there. The all others 9-5, not a bad value at all either. Smoking out the Cigar Mile, we talked about the Locke's return, post time coming out of the Breeders' Cup Dirt Mile, and Flavian Pratt trying to pursue Jerry Bailey's record for most single season graded stakes victories. 7-day out entries, like it or not, we both like it. Santa Anita's moving to the 7-day out entries when their classic meet begins December the 26th. And our 2 stars of tomorrow, it was Brad Cox's week, so why not? Patch Adams on the Colts side looks like a serious Kentucky Derby threat, and maybe it'll be a Kentucky Oaks threat for Idiomatic's half-sister Chasen, our other star of tomorrow. Those 5 topics are now official because Jeff Siegel and I said so. That's how we play it, and we'll do it again in a week's time with 5 more topics on the board. Every once in a while, we get a bonus topic that's fun and irreverent and sometimes newsworthy. Today, we're going to the latter, a newsworthy nugget that came across the news wires just before we came on the air to record our podcast. Saratoga announced that they will run 2 Belmont at Saratoga meets this year before the 40-day proper season. Saratoga racing dates this year, July 10th through September 1st. That's the regular dates, but there will be 5 days of racing during the Belmont Stakes Festival, June 4th through 8th. And now the new twist this year, Jeff Siegel, July 4th weekend, July 3rd through 6th. So the 3rd, 4th, 5th, and 6th, 4 racing days added at Saratoga. It's part of the Belmont at Saratoga meet, they'll call it. So it's not part of the Saratoga meet, but it's just going to run right into the Saratoga meet starting the next week. So 49 days of racing at Saratoga. What was it? 16 days used to be the Saratoga meet, something like that. Now we're up to 49. So Woody Stevens used to say it's not the 16 days at Saratoga, it's the 16 nights that get you. I guess 49 nights at Saratoga. Old Woody wouldn't stand a chance, Jeff.
I remember when I was growing up, Santa Anita had their meeting was 55 days. And then after that, Hollywood wouldn't start for another 2 months or a month and a half, and we had harness racing out here. I mean, you got to gamble on something, right?
Right.
But then we went year round, and sometimes it thins things out. But I have a hunch they won't be hurting for entries at Saratoga, even with the extra days.
No, and the interesting thing will be when we get to 26, 27 season, when the new Belmont Park reopens and they're running year round at Belmont. Will this set them up to run more days at Saratoga and give that facility and that track more of a break when it's just a 2-circuit facility full-time in New York when they close Aqueduct and reopen the new Belmont Park? So that's going to wrap things up this week on It's Official. More Saratoga to enjoy. I'm looking out the window, and it's snowing like crazy. I'm looking out Jeff's window in the back of his set there, and he's got nothing but sunshine. So we'll go 2 different weather directions until we meet again on Friday, Jeff. We've got the handicapping show coming back this week, First Call. We were off last week for Thanksgiving, so we're back handicapping this weekend. You've got some work to do to get ready for Friday.
Yeah, for sure. I mentioned the weather at 75 out here today. I got the heater on because, I mean, that's cold out here. We've got plenty of good racing ahead. And I love talking about what happened and what's going to happen. And we do that every Tuesday on It's Official. So we'll see you again next week at this time. And, of course, don't forget our handicapping show on Friday mornings. We'll be looking ahead to the weekend there on First Call. So we'll see you then.
All right. Have a great week, everybody. Talk to you then.